I was 22 when my mother told me I'd be a failure for the rest of my life. She didn't say it during an argument. She said it over breakfast, casually, like she was commenting on the weather. We were sitting in the kitchen of the house I grew up in, sunlight cutting across the worn linoleum floor that had been there since I was a child, the same pattern I used to trace with my finger while waiting for the school bus. She was stirring her coffee with one hand, scrolling through her phone with the other, not even bothering to look at me when she spoke. "You're not built for success, Nora," she said without looking up. "Some people just aren't. You should probably get used to that now before you waste too much time chasing something that's never going to happen." I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I didn't ask what made her so certain. I just finished my eggs, rinsed my plate in the sink that dripped no matter how many times I'd offered to fix it, and left for work. I worked at a call center back then, taking complaints about cable bills from people who had every right to be angry. 40 hours a week in a grey cubicle with fluorescent lights that buzzed constantly and a headset that left red marks on my ears. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even interesting. But it was mine. What my mother didn't know was that I had already started building something on the side, a small consulting business focused on customer retention strategies. I'd been working on it quietly for 8 months, using every free hour I had after my shifts ended. I didn't tell her because I'd learned a long time ago that sharing dreams with her was like handing her ammunition. She had a way of taking the things I cared about and using them as proof that I didn't understand how the real world worked. My name is Nora Finch. I'm 38 now, and I run a company that employs over 400 people across 3 regional offices. My mother is one of them. She doesn't report to me directly most of the time, but she knows I'm the one who signs off on her performance reviews. She knows I'm the one who approved her hiring 3 years ago when she showed up in our applicant pool, desperate and newly unemployed after her previous company downsized without warning. She'd worked there for 20 years, and they let her go with 2 weeks severance and a form letter. I didn't gloat when I saw her name on the list. I didn't call her. I didn't send a text with a petty comment. I just moved her application forward like I would anyone else's, let the process run its course, and made sure everything stayed professional. When she started, I made sure she was assigned to a team far enough from the executive floor that we wouldn't cross paths often. I didn't want drama. I didn't want confrontation. I wanted distance. But last month, something shifted. She made a mistake, a significant one, and it landed on my desk because all client escalations above a certain threshold require executive review. Now I have to decide what to do about it. And for the first time in years, I'm thinking about that breakfast, about the way she looked at me like I was already buried, like my future was something she could see clearly and it wasn't worth her time to pretend otherwise. I need to tell you how we got here. Not because I want sympathy. I don't. But because the weight of this story only makes sense if you understand how long it took to build, how many small cuts it took before I stopped feeling them. Growing up, my mother had 2 modes, indifference and critique. There was no middle ground. My younger sister, Claire, was the favorite. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't something I had to guess at or wonder about in private moments. It was obvious to everyone, including the neighbors who watched my mother beam at Claire's dance recitals while I sat in the back row doing homework by the glow of the exit sign. Claire got the piano lessons that cost $60 a week. She got the summer camps in the mountains, where she learned archery and made friendship bracelets. She got the college fund that my mother started when Claire was born, the one that grew steadily while mine was never even opened. I got a part-time job at 15 stocking shelves at a grocery store, and a reminder that if I wanted anything beyond the basics, I'd have to pay for it myself. Character building, my mother called it. What it actually built was a deep, quiet resentment that I learned to carry without showing. The way you learn to carry a heavy bag without letting anyone see how much it weighs. My mother worked as an office administrator at a mid-sized insurance firm downtown. She wasn't wealthy, but she was comfortable. She had enough for small luxuries, enough for weekend trips with Claire, enough to buy herself new clothes every season. She could have helped me. She chose not to. She said it would make me stronger, that I'd thank her one day when I understood what real work looked like. What I understood instead was that love in my house was conditional. It was distributed based on potential, on charm, on some invisible metric I could never quite meet. Claire was effortless. She smiled and people wanted to help her. I worked, and people expected more. When I told her I wanted to study business, she laughed. Not a polite chuckle. A real laugh, the kind that made her put down her coffee mug so she wouldn't spill it. "You're not smart enough for that, Nora. Be realistic. Maybe try something like administrative work. You could be a secretary somewhere. That's steady." So I went to community college instead. Paid for it myself with loans and weekend shifts at the grocery store that became full-time during summer breaks. I graduated with a degree in business administration that she never acknowledged. She didn't come to the ceremony. She said she had a conflict at work, something she couldn't move. Claire was there, at least. She took a photo of me in my cap and gown and posted it online with a caption about being proud. My mother liked the post but didn't comment. The consulting business started small, smaller than I'd planned. I helped a friend's startup refine their customer service model, wrote them a detailed report on reducing churn and improving response times. They paid me $300. It felt like a fortune. I used that money to build a website, basic but professional, and suddenly another client came. Then another. Within 2 years, I had enough income to quit the call center and focus on consulting full-time. I didn't tell my mother when I incorporated. I didn't tell her when I signed my first 5-figure contract with a regional healthcare company that needed a complete overhaul of their patient communication system. I didn't tell her when I hired my first employee, a recent graduate named Marcus who worked harder than anyone I'd ever met. She found out eventually, of course. My sister mentioned it at a family dinner, casually, while passing the potatoes. My mother's face went tight. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't ask questions. She said, "Let's see how long that lasts." Most small businesses fail in the first 2 years. It lasted. It grew. By the time I turned 30, my company had 20 employees working out of a leased office space with real conference rooms and a break area that didn't smell like burnt coffee. I had a client roster that included names people would recognize, companies that trusted me with projects worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I moved out of my cramped apartment into a house with a yard, a 2-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood where I could sleep through the night without worrying about payroll or whether the bank would approve my line of credit. My mother never asked how I did it. She never asked what the company did, never expressed interest in the work that consumed my life. She just stopped mentioning it altogether, like it didn't exist. When Claire got engaged to a man she'd been dating for 6 months, my mother planned a party and invited half the neighborhood, rented a tent for the backyard, hired a caterer. When I hit $1 million in annual revenue, she sent a text. "Good for you." 2 words. No punctuation, no follow-up. I stopped expecting anything different. I built my life around the assumption that she would never be proud of me, and I made peace with that. Or I thought I had. I told myself it didn't matter, that her opinion was irrelevant, that I was successful despite her, not because of anything she'd done. I convinced myself I'd moved on. Then, 3 years ago, she lost her job. The insurance firm she'd worked at for 20 years restructured during a merger. They eliminated entire departments, let go of senior staff to cut costs, and offered early retirement packages that barely covered a year's rent. She was 59, overqualified for most entry-level roles, too expensive for the mid-level positions she wanted, and too old for companies that preferred younger candidates who'd work for less. She applied everywhere. She got nowhere. I found out through Claire, who called me late on a Tuesday night, her voice tight with panic. "Mom's struggling. She's too proud to ask for help, but I think she's running out of savings. She's been applying for months, and she's not getting anywhere. Can you do anything? I know things are complicated between you two, but she's still our mother." I could have said no. I could have reminded Claire that our mother had never helped me when I was struggling, never offered support when I needed it most, never even pretended to believe in me. But I didn't. I told Claire I'd look into it. I didn't promise anything, but I said I'd see what I could do. 2 weeks later, my HR director forwarded me a batch of resumes for an open position in our customer relations department. We were expanding and needed experienced coordinators who could handle complex client accounts. I was reviewing them during my lunch break when I saw it. Diane Finch, Customer Relations Coordinator applicant. I stared at the name for a long time, stared at the screen until the letters blurred slightly. She had used her professional name, the one she insisted on at work, the one she used when she wanted to sound authoritative. She hadn't mentioned me in her cover letter. She probably assumed I'd never see it, that HR would screen it and make a decision without my involvement. I could have rejected it immediately. I could have deleted it and moved on. I could have let someone else handle it and pretended I never saw her name at all. Instead, I moved her forward. I made sure she interviewed with a manager I trusted, someone who wouldn't ask questions about our relationship, someone who would evaluate her fairly based on her skills and experience. She got the job on her own merit. I made sure of that. I didn't influence the decision beyond allowing her application to proceed. When she started, she sent me a short email, professional, distant. Thank you for the opportunity. I won't let you down. I read it 3 times, then archived it without replying. For 3 years, she worked quietly. She showed up on time every day, completed her assignments, without complaint, stayed out of trouble. She was competent, careful, exactly the kind of employee you want, but never particularly notice. We saw each other exactly twice. Once at a company holiday party where she avoided me entirely, standing on the opposite side of the room talking to people from her department, and once in the elevator where she nodded and said nothing while we rode 7 floors in silence. I thought that was how it would stay. Professional, distant, neutral. A strange arrangement, maybe, but one that worked well enough. She had a job she needed. I had a company that needed competent people. It was transactional, clean, uncomplicated. Then, last month, one of our major clients filed a formal complaint. They claimed they'd been given incorrect information about a service contract renewal. Information that cost them significant money when they made decisions based on data that turned out to be wrong. The error was traced back to my mother's team. Someone had misread a clause in the original agreement and communicated incorrect terms to the client. It was a genuine mistake, the kind that happens in any organization. But it was also the kind that has serious consequences. The report landed on my desk because all client escalations above a certain threshold require executive review, company policy. I read it 3 times, checking every detail, making sure I understood exactly what had happened and who was involved. The mistake was clear. The client was right to be upset, and my mother's name was on the email chain, her signature on the approval that went out to the client. She hadn't written the original error. A junior coordinator had made the initial mistake, but my mother had reviewed it, signed off on it, approved it without double-checking the source material. She had trusted information she should have verified. It was a failure of oversight, and it was completely her responsibility. I could have delegated this. I should have. I could have handed it to my operations director and let him handle the disciplinary process, kept myself removed from anything that involved her directly. But I didn't. I scheduled a meeting with her for the following Monday at 9 in the morning. She arrived exactly on time. I watched her walk into my office through the glass walls that separated my space from the rest of the floor. I watched the moment she realized it was just the 2 of us. No HR representative, no manager as a buffer. Her face didn't change, but her shoulders stiffened, her pace slowed slightly. She sat down in the chair across from my desk, the same chair where executives and department heads sit when we discuss strategy or performance metrics. "Sit down," I said, though she already had. She folded her hands in her lap and waited. I slid the printed report across the desk, all 12 pages of it, documentation of the error, the client's complaint, the revenue impact. "I'm sure you've already seen this." She glanced at it without picking it up, then looked back at me. "Yes. Do you understand the severity?" "Yes. We lost that account. They're not coming back. They've already signed with a competitor. That's $40,000 a month in recurring revenue, gone." She didn't flinch. She didn't make excuses. "I know." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. The woman sitting across from me looked older than I remembered, more tired. The confidence she used to carry had worn down into something quieter, more defensive. So, what happened? I trusted the information I was given. I should have verified it myself. I didn't. That's on me. Her voice was steady. No deflection. No attempt to blame the junior coordinator who made the initial error. Just ownership, clean and complete. It caught me off guard. I'd expected defensiveness, maybe even anger. Instead, she was giving me exactly what any manager wants from an employee who's made a mistake: accountability. "You're right," I said. "It is on you." Silence settled between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Outside my office, I could hear the muted sounds of the floor, keyboards clicking, phone calls, the quiet hum of productivity. Inside, there was nothing but the weight of everything unsaid, years of accumulated distance and disappointment sitting between us like a third person. "I'm not going to fire you," I said finally. She looked up, genuinely surprised. "But I am going to reassign you. You'll move to a quality assurance role. You'll be reviewing other people's work instead of handling client-facing communication. You'll report directly to me for the next 6 months. Every week you'll give me a summary of what you've reviewed, what errors you've caught, what patterns you're seeing." "Directly to you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I want to make sure this doesn't happen again. Because you need oversight right now. And I'm the person who's going to provide it." She studied me, and for the first time in years, I saw something other than indifference in her face. I saw fear. Real fear. Not of losing her job, but of something else. Something deeper. Fear of being seen, maybe. Fear of being measured and found wanting by someone who had every reason to let her fail. "Understood," she said quietly. "Good. You start the new role Monday. HR will send you the paperwork." She stood, gathered the report carefully, and walked to the door. Then she paused with her hand on the handle, not turning around. "Nora." I looked up. "Thank you." The words hung in the air, strange and uncomfortable. I didn't respond. She left, closing the door softly behind her. That was 4 weeks ago. Since then, she's reported to me every Monday morning at 9. She comes to my office, sits in that same chair, and presents her work. She reviews outgoing client communications, flags errors before they reach customers, provides detailed feedback on clarity and accuracy. She's meticulous, more careful than I expected, more thorough than she probably was before, when the stakes felt lower. We don't talk about the past. We don't talk about anything that isn't work. She doesn't mention my childhood. I don't mention her doubts about my future. We exist in this strange professional space where history is acknowledged only by how carefully we avoid it. But every week, when she sits across from me in that chair and walks through her findings, I see something shifting. She's learning to respect the work, learning to respect the systems I've built, the standards I've set, and maybe, slowly, she's learning to respect me. Last Monday, she finished her report 15 minutes early. She was packing up her things, sliding her laptop into her bag, when she stopped. "Can I ask you something?" I looked up from my laptop. "Go ahead." "Why did you hire me?" I closed the laptop and gave her my full attention. "You were qualified. You could have rejected me. No one would have known. No one would have questioned it." "No," I said, "but I would have." She looked at me for a long moment, searching my face for something. I don't know if she found it. Then she nodded slowly. She left without another word, and I heard her heels clicking down the hallway toward the elevator. I'm not sure what I expected from this arrangement when I set it up. Reconciliation, maybe. An apology. Some acknowledgement of everything that came before, all the ways she failed to see me or believe in me. But what I've realized over these past 4 weeks is that I don't need any of that. What I needed was for her to see me. Not as the daughter she underestimated. Not as the person she dismissed over breakfast while scrolling through her phone. But as the professional who built something real, something substantial, something she now depends on for her livelihood. And she does see me now. I know because of the way she looks at me during our Monday meetings. There's no smirk, no condescension, No dismissive comment about how I should be more realistic. Just focus. Just respect. Just a quiet understanding that the person sitting across from her is competent, successful, and in charge. Yesterday, she sent me an email after her shift ended. The subject line was blank. The body said, "I'm proud of what you built here." I should have said that a long time ago. I read it twice, sitting at my desk after most of the office had cleared out for the evening. Then I archived it without responding. I didn't respond because I don't need her pride. I stopped needing it years ago. Sometime between that breakfast and the first major client contract I signed, between the moment she said I wasn't built for success and the moment I realized I could build success anyway. But I will admit this, it felt good to read. Not because it healed anything. Wounds this old don't heal cleanly. But because it confirmed what I already knew. I was right. She was wrong. And now she works for me. I'm not going to fire her. I'm not going to punish her beyond what's already happened. She's doing good work in her new role, catching errors that would have slipped through otherwise, improving the quality of our client communications. But I am going to keep her in that role, reporting to me, for as long as she's here. Because every Monday morning, when she sits across from me and gives her update, she has to look at the person she said would never amount to anything. And that person is her boss. That's not revenge. It's not cruelty. It's just gravity. Some people rise, some people fall. And sometimes, the person who told you that you'd fail ends up watching you succeed from a desk you approved, in an office you designed, working for a company you built from absolutely nothing. I didn't plan this. I didn't scheme or manipulate or wait for the perfect moment to strike. I just worked. I built something. I made good decisions more often than bad ones. I hired the right people, learned from my mistakes, stayed focused when things got difficult, and when she needed a place to land after her own career collapsed, I let her land here, not out of kindness, not out of cruelty. Just because I could. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have believed in you, you know this feeling. It's not rage. It's not even satisfaction. It's just clarity. The kind that comes when you realize you don't need to prove anything anymore, because the proof is already built. The proof shows up for work every day. The proof sits in meetings and takes notes. The proof gets direct deposit every 2 weeks. My mother will retire in a few years. When she does, I'll approve her pension paperwork. I'll sign the acknowledgement of her service. I'll probably even attend her retirement party if she has one. Stand in the back with a glass of sparkling wine and listen to people talk about her years of dedication. And I'll do it without a second thought. Because by then, she'll have spent years working for the company I built. The one she said wouldn't last. The one she said I wasn't smart enough to run. The one she dismissed entirely until she needed it to survive. She was wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong. And every day she shows up here, every Monday morning when she walks into my office with her reports, she knows it. That's enough for me. That's more than enough.